There's a lot of talk about elevated horror these days, which is kind of a weird and semi-meaningless cliche term. But good horror movies have always been elevated, going back to Carl Dreyer's Vampire, for instance. I came up really a lover of early cinema, even when I was young. So I really loved everything from Hammer horror to silent horror films. I think probably the greatest elevated horror movie is The Exorcist, which is incredibly well made and beautifully directed and beautifully acted. So I'd say watching the classics, but I think that the classics are, should refer to kind of what people view as low art too. Some of the greatest stuff is trashy or sort of considered trashy. And that's stuff that started to happen in the 50s and 60s, some of that through Hammer horror, and then you got into like Peter Jackson and Raimi. You can't make horror films and not see, something like The Thing, Carpenter's The Thing, The Exorcist, on sort of one hand, these sort of grand classic movies that are more modern, but on the other you should be looking at Brain Dead and Evil Dead 2. I'd say probably Evil Dead 2 is the most important modern horror movie, and it's probably the sort of most innovative and influential of all modern horror movies. So I would say that's a must. I mean, Evil Dead 2 spawned everything that came after it. I think what Raimi and Peter Jackson were doing at that time were just rewriting the rules of the game, using a lot of the same kind of spirit and innovation of filmmakers that came before, just kind of DIY, pull a bunch of people together, make something out of the seat of your pants with a lot of invention, a lot of ambition far surpassing whatever money you had. But they were pulling different tropes together in ways that no one had really been doing. And I think Evil Dead 2 is the crowning achievement of those films and has spawned everything. I mean, it was a big influence on Tom Stern and myself when we made Freaked, which was in '92. So it tells you how long kind of the arc of that tale is. I think it's so long now that a lot of kids coming up today don't even know about it. They just know the influences. Sort of like people will watch these elevated horror movies now and not realize that they come from a very specific tradition. So I think it's a good place to stop in and visit and have it infect you in that way. And certainly it was an influence for us on Destroy because, Destroy All Neighbors was a DIY punk movie, basically, made by a bunch of friends with very limited budget and a lot of ambition, and everybody on it was doing something, whether it was Ryan Katner, who was doing the score with Brett, as well as playing a character, and art department was building a makeup effects rigs and practical effects rigs. So it was one of those sets where every day when you go in, we're all doing something. Even the actors are pitching in to do something. Hi, it's Alex Winter. You can watch our movie Destroy All Neighbors on Shudder right now.